Welcome guys to the new year 2025. This is our first story for this year and we really want to appreciate you guys for sticking with us throughout 2024. I would like to let you guys know that this year is going to be as interesting as ever. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please support this channel by subscribing, liking this video and sharing it with your friends. And so our story for today focuses on King Richard the Lionheart, or the Crusader King, and it might interest you to know why he got the nickname Lionheart or Crusader King. So apparently it's a funny one because out of King Richard's 10 years reign as King of England, he only spent a few months on his throne in England, while the rest of his years he spent fighting wars in foreign lands, which cemented his nicknames as the Lionheart or the Crusader King. So let's dive straight into the story. Richard I of England, famously known as Richard the Lionheart, was born on September 8, 1157 in Oxford, England. He was the third son of King Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine, one of the most powerful and influential women of that time. From an early age, Richard demonstrated qualities that set him apart, bravery, charisma, and a fierce determination that would define his life and legacy. When Richard was still a very young boy, his father, King Henry and King Louis VII of France agreed that Richard should be wedded to Louis' daughter Alice. This engagement was to last for some time, but Richard never showed any interest in her and the marriage never held. Richard was not originally destined for the throne. As the third son, his role was to serve as a loyal vassal to his elder brothers, and it appears that he didn't even have much interest in being king. However, destiny had other plans. His elder brother, Henry the Young King, died in 1183, bringing Richard into prominence. By this time, Richard had already gained a reputation as a formidable military leader, having subdued rebellions and defended his mother's land in Aquitaine against rival claimants. As a young duke, Richard showed his exceptional skills in battle and a deep understanding of the politics of war. These qualities were soon tested on a much larger scale. In 1187, the Muslim leader Saladin recaptured Jerusalem, prompting Pope Gregory VIII to call for the Third Crusade to reclaim the Holy City for Christendom. Richard, deeply moved by religious fervor and seeking glory, took the cross in 1189. By then, he had become the King of England following the death of his father, Henry II, on July 6, 1189. This also made him the Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou. Richard's preparation for the crusade was meticulous. He raised vast sums of money as he drew heavily from the royal treasury and sold anything that might bring him funds: offices, castles, lands, towns, and lordships. In fact, he once remarked that he would have sold the whole country if he could have found a buyer. Fortunately, he couldn't find anyone with the necessary funds. In less than a year after his accession to the throne, Richard the Lionheart raised a substantial fleet and an impressive army to take on crusade. His determination was unwavering. This was not merely a holy mission, but also a personal quest to secure his legacy as a warrior king. Richard embarked on the crusade in 1190, leading a vast army alongside other European leaders, including Philip II of France and Frederick Barbarossa of the Holy Roman Empire. The journey to the Holy Land came with its challenges. Political tensions arose between the leaders of the crusade, and Frederick Barbarossa's untimely death left Richard and King Philip of France to carry the burden. Philip and Richard agreed to go to the Holy Land together, but not all was well between them. The French king wanted some of the lands that Richard's father, King Henry II, had held, and that were now in Richard's hands, which he believed rightfully belonged to France. Richard was not about to relinquish any of his holdings. In fact, he shored up the defenses of these lands and prepared for conflict. But neither of the kings really wanted war with each other, and especially with a crusade awaiting their attention. Basically, continuing their quarrel was not really feasible for either of the kings, but especially not for Philip, since Richard the Lionheart had worked so hard to fund his part in the crusade. The French king chose to accept the promises that Richard made to marry Philip's sister Alice that he had been engaged to since when he was still a very young boy. En route, Richard displayed his military prowess by capturing the strategic city of Messina in Sicily and later conquering Cyprus, which he used as a base for the crusade. His conquest not only showcased his tactical brilliance but also secured crucial resources for the campaign. During this time, several events occurred which deteriorated the bond between King Richard and King Philip, of which the notably one was that Richard's mother Eleanor arrived in Sicily with her son's bride, and it was not Philip's sister. Alice had been passed over in favor of Berengaria of Navarre, and Philip wasn't in either a financial or military position to address the insult. His relationship with Richard the Lionheart further deteriorated, and they would never recover their original affability. Richard's arrival in the Holy Land in 1191 marked a turning point in the crusade. The city of Acre, a key stronghold, had been under siege by the Crusaders for 2 years but remained unconquered. The work Philip had done upon his arrival to mine and sap the walls contributed to its fall. However, Richard not only brought an overwhelming force, he spent considerable time examining the situation and planning his attack before he even got there. It was almost inevitable that Acre should fall to Richard the Lionheart, and indeed, the city surrendered mere weeks after the king arrived. His victory at Acre was a testament to his strategic mind and unyielding spirit. Shortly afterwards, Philip returned to France, and Richard was probably glad to see him go. However, his ruthlessness also came to light when negotiations with Saladin over the exchange of prisoners broke down. Richard ordered the execution of 2,700 Muslim captives. This act, though controversial, underscored his reputation as a decisive and fearsome leader. One of Richard's greatest triumphs came at the Battle of Arsuf in September 1191. Saladin's forces, known for their hit-and-run tactics, attempted to ambush the Crusaders. Richard, displaying exceptional battlefield command, maintained discipline among his troops and launched a counter-attack that routed the enemy. The victory cemented his reputation as one of the greatest military commanders of his age. Following Arsuf, Richard advanced towards Jerusalem. However, logistical challenges, the harsh desert climate, and Saladin's scorched-earth tactics made the campaign increasingly difficult. Though Richard reached within the sight of the holy city, he ultimately decided not to attack. He knew that even if he captured Jerusalem, he lacked the resources to hold it. This pragmatic decision, though criticized by some, highlighted his strategic acumen. Whilst reports of his daring deeds and exploits in the Holy Land excited the folks back home and the Rome, in reality, he failed to achieve the main objective, which was to regain control of Jerusalem. In 1192, Richard and Saladin reached a truce known as the Treaty of Japa. The agreement allowed Christian pilgrims access to Jerusalem, while leaving the city under Muslim control. Though the crusade failed to achieve its ultimate goal, Richard's leadership secured significant gains for Christendom, including the coastal strongholds and safe passage for pilgrims. The treaty was a diplomatic victory and showcased Richard's ability to balance warfare with negotiation. After the peace deal with Saladin, he set off alone on the long journey home. The tension had already grown so bad between the kings of England and France that Richard chose to go home by way of the Adriatic Sea in order to avoid Philip's territory. Richard's return journey to England was perilous. Shipwrecked off the coast of Austria, he was captured by Duke Leopold V, whom he had offended during the Crusade. Richard was handed over to Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, who held him for ransom. The demand was enormous: 150,000 marks, equivalent to 2 to 3 years' revenue for the English crown. Well, kings apparently do not come cheap, and in England, it took a quarter of every man's income for a whole year to raise the funds for Richard's release. His mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, played a crucial role in raising the ransom, and in 1194, Richard was finally released and eventually returned to England. Upon his return to England, he was crowned again to demonstrate that he was still in charge of his kingdom. However, he didn't spend much time in England and spent the rest of his life in France doing what he seemed to enjoy best: fighting. He headed directly to France to engage in warfare with King Philip of France, his former friend, who captured some of Richard's lands, and then in 1199, during a siege of the castle of Gallos-Jabrod, Richard was struck by a crossbow bolt and the wound became infected. Richard ordered the archer who had shot him to come to his bedside. The archer's name was Bertram, and Richard gave him 100 shillings and set him free. King Richard died from this wound at the age of 41 on April 6, 1199. A sad end for the Lionheart, and oops, also for the poor Bertram the archer. Despite the king's pardon, he was flayed alive and then hanged. The throne passed to his brother John, who had all the while been wishing and planning on how he could have the throne for himself. Richard's nickname, the Lionheart, reflects his bravery, strength, and indomitable spirit. He was a warrior king who led from the front, earning the respect of both his allies and enemies. Even Saladin admired him, describing Richard as a notable adversary. Though he spent little time in England, his reign left an indelible mark on history. His exploits during the Third Crusade, his military genius, and his larger-than-life personality immortalized him as one of the most iconic figures of the medieval world. Richard the Lionheart's story is not just one of war and conquest. It is a tale of courage, sacrifice, and the pursuit of eternal glory. Thank you for watching our story of King Richard the Lionheart, the Crusader King. We hope you enjoy learning about this fascinating chapter of history. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Don't forget to like this video and share it with your friends who love history and mythology as much as you do. Drop a comment below to let us know your thoughts or suggest the next story you would like to hear. Thank you for your support, and we can't wait to see you in the next tale.